REST API to work with queue storage. See, earlier I have already shown you how you can make use of REST API for working with table storage. And we have written client in C# and we have written client also in JavaScript. As a last topic in this particular module, I would like to show how we can write a REST API client using queue storage. So almost the same procedure, and of course I'm going to write my code in C#. So I'll just copy all this as it is. I'm copying the whole project. I'll paste it in a new project which I created, console based application I created. As it is, I have pasted. So what all we have here? We have Azure storage constants, the class which I copied from the previous project. It has table endpoint, queue endpoint. Of course, now we don't need table endpoint, only queue endpoint is needed. Create authorization header. Actually speaking, we would not need this function because I have embedded all the code in post message itself. I have only two methods here: post message, get message, and main, which is calling post message, getting me the request ID, and I'm having another method called as get message. From this queue, I'm getting a message, get messages rather, all the messages we are getting, and that is in XML format, printing that XML as it is. So let's understand post message, queue name, and the message which we want to add to the queue. Request method is post because we want to add a message. URL path, you have to give queue name slash messages. That's the path supposed to be. Queue name slash messages. Storage service version, you can give 15.54 or 12.12, 12 to 12. It's your choice. Date in RFC format as usual. When you are adding a message, we have to add a message in a particular format here. This is as per the documentation. You can actually go to the queue documentation and from there figure out what is the format in which the message has to be added. So here you are actually supposed to place your message. So I'm doing string.format with my message as a part of message text under queue message. UTF encoding, converting that content into byte array, length of that message, because that is what I'm going to now make use of for constructing string to sign, and as well as I want to send that as a HTTP request. This is like content length and content. And here you should see the number of slash n's are many when compared to the table storage. We have more number of slash n's. Of course, for this also I already showed you how you can see the documentation and use it. Search queue storage REST API reference, and you have all these methods. What is that we are interested in? Post message. That is put message. Go there, and here it clearly says post my queue name slash messages is the URL it is supposed to be, and request body message is in this particular format. Complete request authorization key body, and these are the required parameters. Post. So same thing I have done here. Framed the URL from here. Now, how did I get this? For this, we'll have to go to authorization documentation. Authentication for storage services. From there, you go to further authorization framing. Constructing the string. Blob queue file services. So many slash n's are there. Whereas for table, only few are there. Table service, only few are there. I have used this particular format, and most of it is null. I'm only providing request method. I'm providing message length. I'm providing canonical header. Sorry, message length is here. Canonical header, which is going to contain your storage account name and the path and the canonical resource. Canonical headers and canonical resource. Headers are supposed to be date and version. Obviously, the date used for creating a canonical header and the date used for sending the request must be same. It should not be different. Authorization header. It's self-explanatory. I would want you to just go through this code in sequence and you will be able to understand. Ideally, trace it. So here we are writing to the stream, getting the request stream, getting the response. The response is going to contain one of these headers which we are reading and returning. Likewise, we have got get messages. So I want to get all the messages. That's why the URL. And here you see, we don't have the content, only request method, headers, and the resource. Headers are again date and version. It's pretty straightforward. Claim the authorization header, use the authorization header along with other parameters. Here we are accepting atom XML format. So now if I run this program, you will see that I'm posting a message into a queue. Of course, ensure that you should have created the queue manually before this. So this is the request ID and this is the response. Queue messages list. Under that queue messages and under that we have properties message ID, insertion time, expiration time, pop receipt. Main message is here. Hello, how are you? And that is the message I have inserted actually. So just wanted to show you that the code is there in the handout. You'll have to copy paste, execute line by line and understand how it is working. But we are able to write RESTful client for queue also. Again, I repeat once again, this documentation, unless you read, things are not going to be easy if you are doing real-time projects using REST API. And if your client is always in C sharp, I would strongly recommend you to use .NET SDK rather than using RESTful API because we have seen the complexities in RESTful API. Whereas in .NET SDK, it is much simpler because most of the code is executed in background. Actually speaking, we use .NET SDK. .NET SDK on our behalf is going to make RESTful clients, RESTful requests only. But we don't have to do that. The SDK, the API, the library, storage account library is doing it for us. And that is the reason we had to add that NuGet package there. So with this, we come to a conclusion of a very important chapter working with storage account services. Thank you.